What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about creating momentum through non-resistance. You know, how you can start to apply this more and more so in the present moment so you can experience more desirable states of consciousness, more, more harmony, more flow, more peace, all these kinds of heavenly things that we're trying to achieve through an outer demonstration. A lot of times we're doing it in reverse. So to really make a positive change, you have to start changing the way you're thinking and not spiraling into like a hopeless attitude, feeling like a victim, feeling like a loser, being self-abasing, being critical, feeling guilty, feeling shame, all these kinds of attributes of the old cursed mindset. We're letting all that shit go. And the easiest way to start to do that is not to battle and resist it, which ultimately strengthens it, which is a really important concept if you're spiraling and it's like, oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed and now I stubbed my toe. Now I'm like hitting every red light. Now I got a weird pain in my body. Now this person in front of me is just being a fucking retard. Now it's just compiling, getting worse and worse and worse as you're spinning down the drain. And as you're doing that, mentally, you're experiencing that as within, so without as a curse, where you can consciously start to use that same momentum for a blessing. Transurfing calls it like the waves of fortune versus like feeding your energy to pendulums. But there's many ways to look at this, and when it comes to momentum, it's important to look at what is already manifested, because it's a gigantic mirror of your own consciousness. And so you have these glaring weeds of things that are just like a shit show. Those are the things to start to evolve and start to change the momentum so they don't continue to be a weed in the garden of your life, but it's more of a time to shift what you're thinking about. What is your mindset in relationship to this item, this shit show, this person, this relationship, whatever it happens to be, and check the thoughts about it. It's like, is there things that are just not even true? You're just like, are you imagining like this person's, for one, separate from God, and that there's some demonic entity that just needs to be destroyed, or they just need to be proven wrong so that you're right, or whatever the judgment call is, within, that's the thing to start to realize that, okay, well, because I'm thinking this way, there's a correlation, there is a correspondence between my mental activity and this mirror going on in the physical world. It's just showing me this bit of consciousness within me, and where in the past I would try to attack it, destroy it, if I didn't like it. If there's some satanic thing, it's like, oh, I need to eliminate that completely from creation, gone, which then ultimately perpetuates it, because what you're resisting persists. What you resist persists. Remember that mantra. Every time you're confronted with an undesirable thing, whether that's a relationship, romantic, marriage, whatever, your relationship you have with your employees, with your customers, with money in general, with your health, all of these things are a relationship. And ultimately there's only one relationship going on, and that's between you and your creator, expressing and demonstrating in all these different forms. But ultimately it corresponds to spirit, to consciousness. And so when it comes to resistance in general, if you're battling fear, if you're believing this us versus them mentality, you're seeing the world as a binary thing. Not to say that that doesn't exist, but it's an illusion of mind in the sense that it is eternally reflecting what is going on within. And so if you have all these stories and narratives about like, oh, there's this reptilian group of this puppet masters that are depopulating everything and like controlling the weather, and they're controlling the minds of all the masses, and you are giving them that godlike attribute in yourself. You're giving your power away to this they, which then is ultimately coming back on you, causing you to suffer, to be hopeless, to feel like a victim, to feel small, to feel like these people up here on a pedestal and you're down here getting the shit all the time. It's not reflective of who you are in Christ at all. You're supposed to walk in victory, and you're already blessed. And so whenever you're faced with these limiting beliefs, these assumptions, this ultimately faith in evil, it's at that point where we can start changing the momentum. Instead of doubling down on what you don't want, more fear, more satanic shit, more enslavement, whatever, you can use non-resistance, which is realizing that, okay, all thoughts are creative. Everything I'm experiencing is like a gigantic mirror. If I want to change the reflection, I don't break the mirror. I change myself. And so you start going within, seeing the thoughts of like, oh, money's the root of all evil. So, all the people with money, they must be the most evilest ones in society. And since I'm a good boy, I'm not that, which then pushes away abundance and locks you into a scarcity belief, which then starts to spiral in a lot of self-destructing pendulums. Just the idea in itself of scarcity, which is an illusion. That's not a real thing. It's just a belief. It's just a thought that you can believe, and when you do believe it, it impresses it into the field of awareness, which then externalizes it into your life like a big mirror, and you see that confirmation coming back at you of like, oh yeah, there's a reason for scarcity. Look at it right there. And if you resist it in the form of like, okay, well, I see this problem, let's battle and resist this problem to fix it, you're perpetuating the problem. It's what the governments do all the time, where they actually make matters worse through blunt force, trying to tackle it, through, we're just going to bang the doors down and we're going to stop people from doing drugs. It's like, okay, sure you are, but like, it's that kind of shit. But, when it comes to non-resistance and kind of non-attachment, it's like looking at everything that's going on in your life as a reflection of consciousness. You can realize that, okay, I'm experiencing an illusion. Yeah, it's in front of me, but there's something else going on. And just the questioning the illusion is a really good first step in snapping out of it and seeing things differently and opening up the idea of non-resistance, in the sense that you can go, okay, well, that's just a thought form made flesh. I can think anything. All things are possible for God in creation. Creation's finished, and everything's happening now. Everything's simultaneously happening. Past, present, futures, all one, because everything is spirit made flesh. Time is an illusion. Oh, Mike, these are bold claims. You must be insane. And it's like, well, you start trying it for yourself, and you can see how this starts to shift how you're experiencing reality through your perception. And so when it comes to like the non-resistance aspect, you look at the thought as just another thought. It's like a buffet. It's like when you take it off its pedestal and you don't want to attack it, you don't want to destroy it, you just you appreciate that as an option. It gives you contrast to really fine-tune what you want, but you're choosing to just pick something else. That is what the non-resistant path starts to look like, where it's just like, oh yeah, that is a possibility because I can think it, I can experience it, I already have in a lot of different ways. A lot of our fears and these ideas of separation come from like the past, when we were unconscious to how powerful our minds were, and how synchronicities work, and like how everything's like spiritually connected. And there's a lot of errors in thinking, not realizing that, hey, I'm not separate from my problems. I'm not separate from this person and the shit that keeps coming to me. I'm not separate from the chaos around me. It's like, it's all part of like you. And when you take responsibility and ownership of your life and everything going on in it, it makes it a lot easier to approach these different beliefs and these assumptions with a non-resistant attitude, where it's just like, yeah, I know that if I fixate on my fears and what I don't want, and I believe that that's a real problem and it's a real thing I need to battle and resist, I'm feeding it my energy to then come back and be a problem. It's so common, and it happens in so many different forms and relationships and creation, that it's obvious after a while. It becomes obvious that, okay, as I'm sitting here like, oh, the world's so filled with all this fucking satanic bullshit, which, look around. There was a point in my evolution, my spiritual walk or whatever, where it's like a satanic Truman Show. I couldn't watch movies. I couldn't watch anything going on in culture. Everything just seemed like it was just fucking distorted. So much of that just is your perception and what you're feeding your attention. Because what I was doing was in consciousness during that time, just like, fuck the New World Order, fuck these Satanists, fuck this, and then it was just satanic shit. That was what I was inundating my consciousness with. Oh, do you see what they're doing with children, and, pedophilia and all this satanic ritual abuse, and, oh, they're meeting up at Bohemian Grove and they're doing this and they're doing that. And it's like, okay, okay, that's something you can observe, that you can peer into the bottomless pit and see. But once you realize that you and your attention is actually feeding a lot of the stuff you don't want, and it just comes back like a dream, like an illusion, well, then you can start to realize that, okay, well, I can feed my consciousness the entire opposite. It's like I am in a good place. Everything is functioning under God's law. There isn't this chaos and random shit happening. It's all a divine correspondence. Well, you can then, take your original attack thoughts and these thoughts of fear and start to transmute them by going, it's just a thought. I can think in terms of fear, or I can think in terms of faith. Either one will produce a seed that will produce a manifestation. Am I going to fixate on what I don't want, planting those seeds in awareness? Or am I going to choose to plant good fruit? Another way is like, okay, I want to have a garden filled with cucumbers. Am I going to plant cucumbers and then, through a bridge of incidents, eventually eat cucumbers right out of the garden? Or am I going to plant dandelions? Well, Mike, dandelions aren't really a weed. Dandelion root probably is a really good thing for you to do. And it's like, that's not what I'm saying. If you intend to grow cucumbers and you plant weeds, if you plant dandelions, your goal is to grow cucumbers, and you get a garden full of dandelions, you're missing the mark. It's important to realize, sinning, missing the mark can be applied to, I'm trying to do this and I'm failing. It's simple. Everything is simple. Nothing is convoluted and complicated. Not to say that you can't, get to a point where it's like you're doing this autistic math formula where it's just like, oh, alpha, omega, pi, delta, blah, 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 and it's just like, yeah, maybe that works. But, it doesn't need to be that complicated. It can be boiled down to like the dumbest person can grasp these things. A child can understand these things. They do understand these things much better, because it's like the egoic consciousness isn't in there fighting for its life, which is like so much of the problem when it comes to these resistant thoughts, is the ego will trick you into battling it to perpetuate itself. It doesn't, when you stop being so hard on yourself and harsh with your old kind of mentality, when you realize like the ego, all these things, instead of making it this adversary and this enemy, you start thinking it as like a scared child that just is trying to live in a fucked up environment. It makes it a lot easier to not be so harsh on yourself, to start loving yourself a little bit more. And that should be the goal moving forward, even today, is just like, what can I do instead of like believing these thoughts of like, I'm a loser, I can't do nothing right, oh, I'm keep missing the mark, I can't do this, I can't do that. All these kinds of limiting beliefs and assumptions that are based on an identity that thinks, oh, I'm separate from my end result. Oh, I'm separate in this middle earth, and God's somewhere in space, and there's demonic things, though. There's no God here, but there's a bunch of satanic shit everywhere. And I'm alone, I must be guilty as they are, so I must be punished, and it's that kind of negative spiral that it is easily let go of when you realize, okay, well, that's a thought, that's more important, that's a belief, which is only a thought that you've thought many times, implanted into awareness and seen a manifestation. But once you realize that dandelion or cursed seeds will sprout just the same as good fruit will sprout, well, then you can stop resisting the cursing and resisting these things, and acknowledge that it's part of creation, that's part of your past. And growth doesn't mean letting go of everything. It means incorporating everything and choosing in the face of that to demonstrate something differently. It's like, there was a time, in my own life, where it's like, I was broke as fuck, but, also just like rejecting money because of like the Ponzi scheme element of it, the whole cartel aspect of it, the whole gangster shit, the whole just illusion of, there's so many reasons that I was just like, I was in that money's the root of all evil, it's like, I don't, this stuff is just, I don't want to pay taxes, that it's like, if I make a shitload of money, then I gotta finance all these dumb bullshit wars and like all this mafia style shit, all these incompetent policies, and like what, trying to build up this fucking pendulum that's just sucking the life out of like the citizens and not doing anything besides being like a succubus, as an energy sucking pendulum. But like The thing of it is like, as you believe those kinds of limiting beliefs, that's what you start to see. But when you realize that creation is like neutral, like a mirror, then it's like, oh, well, then it's crazy then to keep fixating and planting seeds of what I don't want and experiencing them unconsciously, when I can like realize, hey, it's just a thought, just like any other thought. It'll impress into the field of awareness, and if it's tied in with like the energy of like belief and expectancy, it'll probably either consciously or unconsciously manifest for you. It's like, if you believe, if your faith is like, oh, I need to play guitar for an hour a day till I hit 10,000 hours and then I'm a master. Well, to you, that's true, because that's what you believe. And because you believe it, just the way creation starts to mirror those beliefs back to you, you'll go through the bridge of incidents where through the doing, you're erasing the fear and the doubt, which also manifests. So it's like through the doing, these limiting beliefs, these doubts of like, I don't know if I can really do this. When I used to skateboard, there was a lot of that conquering fear through taking action. It's like if you go up to like, a set of stairs or something, and you just want to do like a simple trick like an ollie. I'm just going to ollie this 6th stair. There's a fear barrier that you're like going for as you're doing that. But at the same time, there's also the belief where it's like, I think I can do this without like seriously hurting myself, or like just like it's impossible. There's like these milestones. There's like these like different things that come to you when you're ready. And it's like, it's just on that threshold where you feel comfortable, but there's still the expectancy that I think I can do this, under the right situation. And then with like skateboarding, a lot of the first initial attempts is just like, you start hurting yourself more by being a pussy and like bailing and not committing to it and trying to stick it. It's like you try to kick the board away because you're afraid of landing weird or whatever. And a lot of times you hurt yourself more doing that. And then it finally gets to the point, this is what I experienced, where it's just like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm falling every time, because I'm not committing to this, and I'm like hurting my ankle, and like I'm landing kind of fucked up. Sometimes the board will land like you say you're like on a skateboard like this, and you go to land a trick and you kick it out, and then it lands like right in your nuts and credit cards you, and it's like, if I just would have committed to it, now I wouldn't be pissing blood for the next couple days. But like it's the same thing with everything. It's because everything is all ultimately one thing. It's all spirit made flesh, the inner being externalized, and that's where you start to make these changes every single time. And when it comes to non-resistance, it's about acknowledging that, hey, this is just a thought and just a possibility in the infinite field of possibilities where everything exists in the here and now. I could, worst case scenario. And if I believe that that's, how creation works, and that that's probably going to happen to me, that's what's going to happen. But you can start to not resist it, because the other thing that can happen is like, oh, I'm so pure that this is not going to happen, and I'm so blessed that this isn't going to happen. And then you create this binary situation where you're like manifesting from a space of like, I need to dominate the evil, or I need to like to battle the evil and beat it through force, which is what it wants, which then feeds it, which then gets you more of the opposite. But non-resistance actually lets you look at it like a buffet, where it's like, yeah, there's the possibility that I could fall, or I could like rack my nuts on the skateboard if I don't land this. That's one possibility. But then the other possibility is like, I'm going to grow and expand, and I'm going to push through this fear. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to commit. I'm going to stick to it. And I know that by doing this, it'll synchronistically happen. I just have faith that this is going to work. So you're either standing in fear in the present moment, which is resistance, or you're standing in faith. Everything. You're either doing fear or faith. Fear or love, ultimately, and when you realize that, then when you realize it's all really one thing, and everything's so coordinated and happening for a reason that's spiritually discerned, well then it's like, well then it's retarded to fixate on what I don't want, the fear, the separation, the hell. And as I do resist these things, like, no, I don't want to go there because I'm a special boy, and blah, 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 and then you start like, I need to immediately, say an affirmation to confirm. A lot of times affirmations are confirmation of the opposite of what you're wanting, because you're trying to manifest from this desperate energy instead of standing in a calm, water's wet, this will manifest. I just need to do my part when in this process to demonstrate love, to be attentive to what's going on, to painting a room, for example. It's all these simple things. But it's like, you can come from a space of like, oh, I'm really afraid I'm going to spill paint all over the carpet, and I'll get paint on the trim, and then what if I get paint on my clothes, and then I track it through the house, or whatever. All these fears and concerns. On the other hand, resistance would be like, I had a fear. Oh no, I'm going to get this under control. Everything's happening for a reason, and then you're like immediately trying to like replace the initial fear out of reactivity because you're afraid of actually doing it, and you're trying to compensate by like, oh no, I need to immediately affirm the opposite, because if I don't, then something bad's going to happen to me, and then my fears are going to manifest, and then you start spiraling and growing the pendulum, which non-selectively will then come back to you to feed more from you. And with non-resistance, like, oh yeah, I mean, it's a possibility I could spill it, but it's like, I'm gonna actually kill this project. I'm gonna fucking have it's gonna look so awesome. The vibe's gonna be so better in here. The energy is gonna be palpable. It's gonna be awesome looking. The colors are gonna really pop, and you really start focusing on what you want versus what you don't want, like a buffet. Not where you're like trying to destroy the idea that you could spill a thing of paint, but it's like, okay, well, that exists as a potential, but I don't want that, so it's like I can start focusing then on like what I want versus what I don't want, being mindful that it's a possibility, but realizing that what I want is actually going to be what I'm planting into awareness, and doing it more consciously. Not trying to destroy the possibility of ever spilling something, but you just kind of, well, even if I do, I can get it clean. This is water based. I can clean it up. This is not a big deal, and it's not something to worry about. I need to focus on what I want, which is just to fucking just knock this thing out and have it look nice, and done deal. And so that's something you can start to try on, start to put into practice more and more. So just non-resistance when it comes to your thoughts, and that way you can start to, for one. And you know what? Some things you can even talk to the thought on some level, where it's just like, well, if I spill it, then that person's gonna be mad, and a lot of it's boiling down to a weird fear of death, And it's like, okay, well, if I drop this belief, because so much of the fear is just trying to keep yourself in to survive, and you'll be tricked into perpetuating undesirable situations, in the sense that at least the undesirable thing isn't death. It's like, at least what this hell is like. It's like you've already experienced it, so it's like, yeah, it's suffering is involved, but at least you're not dead. It's just so much of like the old kind of ego consciousness is just trying to keep itself alive through tricking you to perpetuate it. It tricks you to fight it, so that it perpetuates it. It tricks you to continuously double down on undesirable situations to feed it. But then you can almost make an egregore, an entity out of it that you're trying to battle and resist and get out of your consciousness. But when you realize it's like, hey, I don't even want to destroy you. You need some energy? Here's some energy. I'm going to show you love. You're just reacting the way you're reacting because you're afraid. And it's just stuff you can say to yourself when you're confronted with these like resistant thoughts, fear, hysteria. It's like, you're just afraid. Yeah, that's a potential. I appreciate that you inform me of this possible danger, but I'm going to choose to kind of focus on harmony instead of this dysfunction, that God's going to come, with the perfect solution to this problem. It's all going to unfold perfectly. There's no reason to be so scared of something bad happening, and here, you're just like any other possibility in creation on a spectrum. You have a right to exist. You have a right to exist in thought. I don't want to destroy you. I don't want to get rid of you. I'll just let you be. And when you stop making this big pedestal out of your thoughts and these suggestions and these offers, and it just naturally starts to melt away, and you can focus more and more on what's unfolding now. What can I make this better? Can I make myself better? Is there anything I can do to get more energy? All these kinds of things, and just in doing that, it starts shifting your momentum from drifting down the toilet to like, okay, I'm not drifting anymore. I'm starting to elevate. And you can start to feel the change in your own energy as you're doing that. And so hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that's something you put into practice if you're spiraling. If you're like really feeding a lot of attention and energy to what you don't want, non-resistance doesn't mean that you continue to live in that state, but it doesn't mean destroying that thought either, because what you're attacking, you're strengthening. It's counterproductive. So it's like you start to show more love to just that idea, that old mindset that that all of that stuff is part of your past, that isn't going to get destroyed, isn't going anywhere. Let it just be, and incorporate it to who you are in Christ. And as you do, you realize, hey, I'm growing, I'm expanding. I'm not constricting and contracting anymore, trying to get rid of all this shit. But it's like, I have a whole pile of shit now. It's like you can incorporate it more and not feel like there's something wrong with you, or like you're evil, or that God hates you, or whatever the fucking belief is. But realize that God is within you. God loves you. God's trying to help you, heal you, strengthen you, build you up to experience more and more awesome manifestations. Because the more impressive the manifestation is, the more that you had to kind of develop your consciousness to be able to demonstrate it in the first place. It's not just like, oh, you just get money is a good example. It's like, oh, you just get a big pile of money. But if you're in scarcity thinking, then next thing you know, it's, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. And you're spending the present moment in fear of loss. I got that with my own body, after my hip replacement, going through this, I got that in November, and now it's like, my body's feeling really good, and there's like times where it's like, oh, it feels so good, I'm afraid it's going to go to shit again, so there's like fear of loss, and everything's kind of like one thing. So it's like, recognizing, oh, that's a fear of loss. Yeah, that's a potential that exists in infinite possibility. There's a timeline in the multiverse where, yeah, that happens, but I'm going to choose to navigate to the timeline where I'm perfectly healthy. I have a miraculous recovery. Everything's getting stronger and stronger every day. It's an inspiration to others that helps them heal too. It's just a different way of looking at it, different way of thinking about it, different way of impressing the field of awareness, which then comes back to you eventually. And the less that you're buying into, like, this is going to be really hard, it's going to be really complicated, it's going to take a lot of time. It's like, nothing's hard. Was it hard for you to be broke? Or did it just kind of seem like it just happened normally and naturally? Same thing. Everything is going to happen normally and naturally. It's to the point where like the unenlightened will look at it and go, well, that's not because of your consciousness. That's because you were in the right place, the right time, you got lucky, and that person, they'll look at the bridge of incidents and think that that's what caused the manifestation, looking about it backwards, like the world does. It's just what it does. The unconscious looks at the outer for the thing. It's just, in my opinion, it's the sin of Adam, empowering this outer world as being the projector. And the react, I need to react. It's like, you need to change your consciousness because you're the one doing it on a lot of different levels by what you're feeding your attention and your mind. But with that being said, I think I'm about. So, I appreciate you guys and girls liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Donation link in the description. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Put it to good use. I appreciate the kind messages that come with those. And until the next now, God bless.